You know that feeling in a relationship where one minute it's this incredible, intense connection, and the next, just baffling distance? Or, hey, maybe you're the one who wants love so badly, but the second it gets real, you find yourself pushing it away. Well, today, we're going to talk about one of the most complex and honestly confusing patterns in relationships: disorganized attachment.
It's this weird paradox, right? It leaves everyone involved feeling hurt and just completely bewildered. So that's the big question we're going to tackle. Why on earth would someone run from the very thing they seem to want more than anything? That's really the mystery we're unpacking here.
All right, so let's get right into the experience itself. People often call it the push-pull paradox. And man, it is a chaotic dance that feels just impossible to understand from the outside. And believe me, it feels even crazier from the inside.
So, for the person on the receiving end of this, it's usually a complete and total shock. I mean, imagine this. One moment, you're talking about the future. You feel this amazing connection, and then, boom, a wall just goes up. Like this person said, you get blindsided by a breakup that feels like it came from absolutely nowhere. And you're just left there, questioning everything.
Okay, but what about the view from the other side? It's fascinating. Someone with this pattern shared something really honest. They know they're creating this deep connection. They're aware of it. But then some kind of internal alarm goes off and poof, they vanish. And here's the thing, it's not usually malicious. It's a survival instinct that's just baked in.
So this is the heart of the whole thing, this massive internal conflict. You've got this deep, fundamental human need for closeness on one side, to love and be loved. But fighting against it is this equally powerful subconscious terror that intimacy is actually a huge threat. So the minute a relationship gets close and vulnerable, that fear just hijacks the system and triggers the impulse to run.
This analogy I came across really captures the dynamic perfectly. It's like a hurt animal. You see it's wounded, you try to help, but it just gets angry and lashes out at you. That's what this is like. It's a primal threat response. You're offering love, you're offering safety, but their entire nervous system is wired to believe that closeness leads to pain. So it reacts with fear, with anger, lashing out to protect itself from the very thing it needs most.
So, where the heck does a behavior this confusing even come from? Well, to figure that out, we have to go back to the beginning, usually to a childhood where the basic rules of safety got completely turned on their head.
Okay, so here's the more clinical definition. Disorganized attachment happens when a kid's caregiver, the person they are literally hardwired to run to for comfort and safety, is also the person causing them fear. You can imagine, for a little kid's brain, this is an absolutely impossible situation.
Seriously, just let that sink in for a second. Imagine you're a little kid. You're scared. Your only instinct is to run to your mom or dad. But what if they're the scary thing? What do? There's no good answer. You can't run toward them and you can't run away. You're just stuck, trapped in this impossible biological paradox.
So this kind of thing can happen for a few different reasons. Maybe a parent has their own unresolved trauma, so they act in ways that are scary or just totally unpredictable. Or it could be more direct, like abuse or neglect. Even a caregiver who just completely withdraws emotionally can cause it. The bottom line is always the same. The person who is supposed to be your safe place is inconsistent and, at times, frightening.
And here's the thing. That impossible paradox from childhood, it doesn't just go away. It gets internalized. It literally becomes a kind of civil war inside your own mind that keeps on fighting, long into adulthood.
Think of it like two opposing armies inside one person. On one side, you have this intense fear of being abandoned. That drives you to be anxious, to cling, to need constant reassurance. But then, on the other side, you have the fear of intimacy that you learned as a kid. And that triggers the exact opposite reaction, to push people away, to create distance, because that's what feels safe. So the person is just constantly bouncing back and forth between these two extremes.
So you might be wondering, how does a little kid even survive that kind of internal chaos? Well, one of the main ways is something called dissociation. It's basically a mental escape when you can't physically escape. The kid just learns to check out, to disconnect from their feelings, from their body, just to get through an impossible situation. And that becomes the go-to coping strategy in adulthood whenever things get too stressful.
There's actually a theory that gives us a really helpful way to think about this. It's called the theory of structural dissociation. And it's really important to say this is not a personality disorder. It's actually a pretty brilliant survival strategy that the brain comes up with. The idea is that the personality kind of splits into different parts to handle things.
You have the apparently normal part, let's call it the ANP. That's the part that gets you through the day. It goes to work, does the laundry, handles all the normal stuff by keeping emotions pushed down. But then you have the emotional part, or EP, and that's the part holding all the trauma, all the intense need for love, and all the terror of being left alone. That whole chaotic push-pull thing we've been talking about, it's basically just these two parts fighting for the driver's seat.
Okay, so let's connect that internal civil war directly to what it actually looks like in a relationship. Because when those two parts are at odds, what you usually get is a pretty predictable cycle of sabotage.
So what are the telltale signs? Well, relationships tend to be super intense, but also really unstable. There's a massive deep-seated problem with trust, and you'll see these really extreme mood swings. But the classic move? Sabotaging things right when they start going well. Because weirdly enough, that feeling of safety and security is the very thing that triggers the fear. And that kicks off the whole cycle. Push the partner away, and then pull them right back in the second that fear of being alone takes over.
And get this, the cycle often keeps going even after a breakup. First, there's this feeling of relief, right? The pressure is finally off. That's often followed by a period of just feeling numb, that dissociation kicking in again. But you can't suppress that need for connection forever. Eventually, the isolation hits, and they start to miss their ex like crazy. And that's when you see them try to reconnect, which of course just restarts the whole painful process.
Okay, so we've spent a lot of time on the what and the why of this really painful cycle. So now for the most important question of all. How? How does someone actually start to heal these incredibly deep wounds and, find their way to a healthy, secure relationship?
And the first, most crucial thing to understand is that there is absolutely hope. These behaviors are coping mechanisms. They showed up for very, very good reasons back in the day. This isn't a character flaw, and it is definitely not a life sentence. With awareness and with some work, change is 100% possible.
Now, getting professional help can be a total game changer. There are a few different kinds of therapy that are known to be really effective. For example, you've got EFT, or emotionally focused therapy, which is all about creating new, safe bonding experiences right now. Then there's a type of EMDR that's focused on attachment, and it helps your brain finally process that old trauma so your nervous system can calm down. And something like DBT, or dialectical behavior therapy, gives you actual practical skills to handle those huge emotions that fuel the whole cycle. And along with therapy, there's so much work you can do on your own. A huge piece of it is learning to swap out that harsh inner critic for some self-compassion. It's about figuring out your triggers, what exactly sets off that push-pull feeling. And it's also about learning to comfort that inner child part of you that was so hurt and scared. It really comes down to actively challenging that old baked-in belief that love and connection always have to end in pain.
And this quote really just sums it all up, doesn't it? Real healing isn't about beating yourself up or shaming yourself into changing. It's about finally giving yourself the kindness and safety that you never got back then. It's about learning to become your own safe place.
So I want to leave you with this final thought. If any of this sounds familiar, either for you or for someone you love, what if the most powerful first step isn't trying to fix it at all? What if it's just understanding? Understanding it with compassion. Because at the end of the day, that understanding is what can finally make the chaos make sense, and it's what lights up the path to healing.